And welcome to the Rates and Lanes podcast. I'm your host, your sweaty host this evening. Just finished up a workout, Rico Muhammad. I'm joined by my co-host down below me, Mr. Chuck Snow, and our guest for this evening. I'm affectionately going to start calling Jeff our resident cargo loss.
Yes.
Fortunately, this is I think maybe about the third or fourth time we've had Jeff join us on the show. And it's always a great discussion, great conversation whenever we have them on, and a very worthwhile topic. We're going to be discussing. Jeff's expertise is cargo loss prevention. If I'm saying, help me, Jeff. Correct me if I'm screwing up your title. But he investigates cargo loss. That's the long and short of it. I believe I'm safe with that one. I'm sorry, Chuck. So y'all have to forgive me. I'm just coming off a workout. These pre-workouts, I'm kind of winding down a little bit.
You're doing great, Rico. Keep it up. You know what? I really felt we needed to bring Jeff on tonight because the reports I'm seeing are saying that cargo loss, truck thefts, fraud, identity theft, double brokering. This is getting to be like the Wild West at Deadwood with logistics. I have grave concerns about what's going on. Jeff and I were just talking just before you came on, Rico. We were just talking, and I pointed out, I said, this is an industry that has historically been built on trust. Everybody trusts everybody. That's how it was built. And now all of a sudden, we've got a bunch of crooks and fraudsters that are looking at trust as a weakness or stupidity. And nothing makes my blood boil harder than when somebody mistakes my trust for stupidity or weakness. That's it. Gloves are off at that point. And I feel that way about what's going on now with the industry. And with no further ado, Jeff, what's going on out there? Because it seems like a madhouse from the reports I'm seeing.
First of all, thanks a lot, guys, for the invite. It's always a pleasure.
Thanks for joining us.
Always enjoy it. I'm honored. It's changed a lot here. The paradigms of cargo theft have kind of changed here in the last year. I think the last time we spoke, we were in the midst of two different types of cargo theft out, primarily on the West Coast, but that's pretty dominant because, as you guys are very aware where you're at, it's Mississauga. In the United States, it's Southern California.
Yeah.
And what we were having is we're a group from South America that had targeted all the computer manufacturers and following trailers that they knew were the ones were shipped, like Acer was shipped out of Compton, and Dell was shipped out of Torrance, and Asus was shipped out of Newark, and they were following them from north to south to north. And there was a large big box store, DC, that's up north that was, anytime a load was going there, they were being followed. Well, a lot of work by a lot of hardworking people with all the task forces and different local police departments around the country, and us working with them. As you guys know, in these cases, they're rarely solved by one incident. It's cumulative. You see videotape from one, then from another. Hey, that guy's got the same limp as that guy. Hey, that's the same car that was used a week ago in Fresno. Same car now that's being used in Bakersfield. Once you put everything together, some arrests were made. So then they started using their B team, so to speak, to start doing some of the thefts. They become very, very sloppy, and arrests were made. So that type of theft has pretty much died down. But what's taken its place, and this was going on simultaneously when those types of thefts were going on, but now it's just exploded, are what we're calling strategic cargo thefts or fictitious pickups, where identities are being stolen from, and then loads are bid on the load board, and then they're usually the bad actor steals an identity, but he hires a legitimate trucker to go pick up the load and not deliver it to the consignee on the bill of lading, but say, hey, this is a blind shipment. I want you to take it over to the West warehouse. And even though the trucker or most of these truckers are honest, reliable truckers, as long as they get paid, they don't really care. They'll take it over, they get paid. So we have to track them down, find out what happened. They said, did you get paid? Yeah, we got paid. So, and then, again, you have to start piecing the information together. But that's become an epidemic, and there's certain we're noticing there's certain commodities that are really being targeted right now. So
Let
that's
me
go ahead.
Well, I didn't mean to cut you off there, Jeff,
Right.
but I just want to jump in real quick, let everyone know that's tuning in. If you want to join the discussion, by all means, if you're watching us on Facebook, YouTube, or any of those other platforms, just type down in the chat and your message will come over. We'll see your message and we'll definitely try to make sure and involve it into the show. So if you got a question, a comment, by all means, use the chat feature to do that. And really quickly, Jeff, just a quick question opening up, because my phone is blowing up maybe 4 or 5 times a day with people that are calling, offering dispatch services.
Yeah.
With all of the different dispatch services that have come into the industry now, are you guys seeing any? And I'm not trying to pick on anybody, but are you guys actually seeing any kind of correlation from the use of dispatch services and the growth of that part of the industry into our industry that is kind of having a correlation with the cargo thefts?
Absolutely. It's interesting you bring that up. I was just on the phone today with an associate that helps me a lot with research. He's a truck broker, and he was just talking. There's a group out here that we're very familiar with that is of a certain nationality that's heavily involved in these fictitious pickups. And we were just talking about how many new trucking companies they're adding in MC numbers
Right.
just for that purpose. Exactly. And then a lot of dispatchers coming up so they can have their own whole fleet of different companies, because a lot of the stolen identities they've been using, we've got a whole list of who they are. So if we can see like XYZ truck, oh yeah, that was used on 5 thefts. We've got the listing of that. But now with these new MC numbers coming out, and also we're seeing an increase in dispatchers. And I think that's the correlation, just because they can just dominate the market. Simple as that.
And so a follow-up to that is, are you guys seeing any kind, and if you don't know, but this is just a question, that's a natural question that popped in my mind. But on a follow-up to that portion of it, if a trucking company does sign on with a dispatch service and their identity happens to get stolen or gets if it's compromised by using that said dispatch service, does that, or do you know, have any effect with their cargo and with their insurance carrier or anything like that? Does that tie over and maybe put them into a little bit of a conundrum with their insurance carrier?
I think that it's a good question, Rico, but I think you're looking for too many dots to be connected too quickly. In all honesty, I mean, Chuck made a great point, and I've said this for years. The thing you notice once you start in this industry and then you get to know it very well, it's a very casually based business. When you show up at a dock, and this is where a lot of people will say, well, can't this be done? Can't this be done? Can't dock workers do more? Well, probably not. Why? Because they're dock workers. They handle freight. They're not security people. So when somebody shows up with proper paperwork, that just might have, and like on these new fictitious pickups, what we've found on case after case, what the driver is given as a document to pick up the load might be something as simple as a rate confirmation. That's it. Only one document.
Yeah.
So if he hands that to a dock worker, what's a dock worker? He's not going to analyze it. Oh, this looks fraudulent to me. He's going to say no. Oh, this is going from here. And a lot of times they do it at the end of the day, so it's at a frenetic time. So it might be the left. So it's like, well, yeah, here's that one load left here. Let's go ahead and load this guy and get him out of here. They don't question the guy about his motives or about, even if he's in the wrong truck. They still, it's one load. He's got the right paperwork. They're going to ship it out. And
it's 100% correct.
Yep.
100%, because a lot of times if checks and balances will follow all the way through the supply chain, from the carrier and the driver, from the shipper to the receiver, if each different person in that chain right there has a different set of criteria that they could use for a check and balance, and if each one of them done that, I'm pretty sure that these numbers could drop almost overnight. But like you said, the casual way that business is conducted in our industry, a lot of times, like you say, a lot of times, it may seem simple enough to go out and make sure that ABC Trucking is on the side of the truck out there that just bumped the dock, but that may be a little bit too much like work at some places. And
you're right.
Well, think about it. I mean, let's look at it logically. Look how many docks there are that are receiving and shipping freight throughout North America. You got a dock where you'd almost have to have a guy assigned to each one of those docks just monitoring that process. and that's not going to happen. That's going to be an extra expense. And he might, what if he's in the bathroom when somebody comes? He doesn't get to check that.
Yeah.
It's really a very hard thing it's a great concept, but it's very, very hard to enact. And it's unfortunate because, again, as Chuck had said, this has always been a casualty based business. A lot of times, years ago, before the internet came in with the load boards, a lot of times you knew your trucker. Hell, he did all your hauling for you. You kind of had covenant agreements, and you had fewer problems. But now, when it can be anybody and the double brokerage, triple brokerage occurs, a lot of times they have no idea who's coming to pick up their freight. So as long as you've got the paperwork that matches, and we're seeing more and more of these large companies, these large brokers, we're seeing more and more of all the vetting being automated. So if you've got Rico Trucking, or then you got Muhammad Trucking, you got Chuck Trucking and Snow Trucking, you got 4 different trucking companies. Whoever bids on that load, they see the name, they go, I've never heard of this Muhammad Trucking, and they run you. Oh yeah, they picked up twice here for us, both times, no issues. That's gonna negate any additional vetting right there.
It's funny you say that, Rick. One of my big challenges was when, in my final days over at Traffics was I would be looking at the payments to carriers, and it would drive me crazy. We would have so many carriers with the same name. You say Muhammad Trucking. Well, there's a lot of Muslim people in the trucking industry. Sikh, there's a lot of Sikh people in trucking, and they have the same last names quite often. It's either Gill or Singh. You know how many Singh Logistics, Muhammad Logistics, names like that, Smith Trucking. It's the same sort of thing. These common names, and I've said it a million times. You go to the pound, or you go to a breeder and you buy a dog, and you think for a while what sort of name you're going to give the dog. Well, I think you should think a lot harder about what name you're going to give your trucking company, because what happens is errors are made. You say you're Smith Trucking from Smooth Rock, Arkansas, and you know what? The dispatcher, somebody in the dispatch office, maybe it's AI, maybe it's an actual person, sees a Smith Trucking, and they're located in Little Rock, and they figure out it's the same one. Boom, they send it, and you never get your confirmation. The wrong guy gets it. All sorts of stuff happens. Wrong person gets paid. That's another thing that happens. Sing Transport calls, and they go, we never got that check. And we take a look, and you know what? They're right. Sing Transport never got the check because it was made out to Sing Trucking. But this sort of thing, and that, there's got to be, you've got to work with and this is discipline from the operations people, everybody. You have to work with MC numbers. That's the only way. You've got to be able to backtrack. And the same as, and I know that I've been saying it for years and years and years, it's really important to have a discipline in a company, especially a smaller company where you don't have a security gate with a guard there, where the shipper, the driver's got to say to the shipper, I've got this load, I'm from Smith Trucking, and I've got load number 79268. And the shipper has to look, yes, you're Smith Trucking, you're supposed to be in for this. And you don't give it to somebody else. We've had, through the years, several incidents, and most of them weren't worked out really well, where a driver went in. This particularly happened in Florida for some reason, and I do know why. In the summer, you would get a driver that was stranded in Miami or Dade or Broward counties especially. He would deliver there, and boss would, of course, say, go to the coffee shop or the truck stop, and wait, I'll get your load. And the driver would quite often say, you know what? Right down the road here, there's a place. Let me see if they've got a load for Canada. Driver goes over there on his own, okay, and backs up to the door and says to the shipper, have you got anything for Canada? I'm not making this up, guys. And the shipper, oh, you're Canada, good. Oh, Canada, door three, I got ready for you. And somebody would pick up our load. And then I would get a call. The actual driver who was supposed to take the load would show up later on that day. Oh, no, load is gone. Who picked up the load? You wouldn't know, and you'd be worried for 72 hours. Miraculously, it would appear at the customer's door, And I would say to the customer, have the driver call me, have him call me. And the guy would call, yeah, I was in that neck of the woods. And here, send me the bills. We're good, buddy. But, send me your paperwork. We'll get you set up. That happened a number of times. And it just, and I would get on the horn to the company that shipped it and say, that we almost had a problem here. Now, whether they fixed it or not after, I don't know. But that's how these things happen. Some of them are innocent, but some of them are intentional.
Well, one of the things we've noticed just found out an investigation last week. There's a truck broker friend of mine that actually became a victim of a strategic cargo or fictitious pickup himself. So knowing what he knows, he followed up on it very, very quickly. And to make a long story short, he recovered the load because once it was picked up, wasn't taken to the consignee who was on the BOL, instead taken to a warehouse here locally, like in Fontana, California. Right. It was picked up. And once he finds the company that actually got the load, signed for it. Of course, the guy running the warehouse is playing both sides of the fence. He's being a bad guy, but he's also trying to help us out. But it admitted there was, it's going to be the storage fee for $400, said to pay $400 to get the load. And it was what we're finding out these days to be the most desirable commodity right now in these fictitious pickups, which are solar panels. Right. And reason being is because there's a push here in this country about going to green energy, so people are putting them on their house, but also there's a pretty big market for them down in Mexico with the cartels buying those to use for plant houses. Right. So that's why they're becoming such a key item. But the other thing that we found out in this case is how this thing was brokered. And on all these cases, we usually get about 4 or 5 of these cases a week. So we're seeing everything, and we're seeing same trucking, same drivers. And when we look at it, I always ask the broker, I say, give me the genesis of the brokerage. They're like, well, what's that mean? I say, give me every single detail of how this load was brokered. Was done electronically, was done telephonically, what kind of paperwork was involved. And once you get that, then you figure out, like I said, what document was used. Because, when we start talking about fictitious pickups and load boards, you go back to 2011 to 2014, it was epidemic, but in a different way. Because how the load would read up on a load board, whether it was get loaded DAT 360 or in a truck stop, it would say load going from like Brea, California to Carlisle, Pennsylvania, a coast-to-coast load. That's way. Number 2, $250,000 of cargo liability insurance required to eliminate marginal carriers. 3, team drivers required. Right. Well, to a thief, that's all he needed to know, because what's that tell him? It's a high-value load. But now they don't do that anymore. Now I'm looking at these, I asked the broker, show me exactly what was up on the load board. And it's just going to say, shipment from Garden Grove, California to Tulsa, Oklahoma. Doesn't list what the commodity is. Yeah. That's it. So we're saying, how do these guys know what they're getting? And just through hook and crook, lack of a better way to say it. Now, some are obvious. If it says something like a Best Buy Dinuba out here, that Best Buy has got a huge distribution center in Dinuba, California. If they see a BOL that shows those as the consignee, well, that's a no-brainer. They're going to bid on that load because they're going to gamble that that's probably a load of electronics. But when it's something where they just got company names, they're probably going to maybe bid on 5 or 6 loads, then get them, and then start Googling the shipper and the consignee to see what they do. And then based on that, then that's a load that we'll go after. And the reason we're fairly certain about this is because we'll have, like we had about 3 weeks ago, 2 loads of Bitcoin servers, $6 million. There's $3 million each, and they got stolen along from the same warehouse, along with a $150,000 load of yarn. Well, when we tracked down who picked it up, the legitimate carrier took it to their warehouse and stored the servers. Next day, a truck comes, takes them, they're gone. But left in there abandoned was the fabric, because they did not want that. So again, it shows you they don't know what they're getting. And we also see it with fact loads. We're seeing, freight of all kind loads being taken and then just being abandoned. So like I said, it's kind of a 2-pronged. The ones where it's an obvious consignee, well, yeah, we'll go after that load. Like they know if it's Red Bull or the address, if they're going to go after that kind of a load. But on these others, it's a little bit of pot luck. And I don't want to go off on a total rant here, but it's interesting when you really start looking at the bad guys involved in this. They've got one very, very large company that they just disbanded and have reorganized under a different company. And within that, these guys are a certain ethnic group. They have their own factory. They have their own big room where if they see a load board and they want loads, they'll jam the phones and they get those loads. Nobody else can get them. So this whole thing is controlled with them, which gets into another area that I was just talking to law enforcement today about that concerns me. Is just think about with everything that's going on in this country right now. Think of the terroristic possibilities of going on with this.
Right.
If you can control our shipping lanes, think how that could be used against us to
Yeah.
cripple this country. And that's something that we're starting to get some federal people just listen. Hey, here's what's possible. This is something we need to take a look at because it's good. You can see how it's done on a daily basis, and they could actually change the course of the supply chain.
Yeah. You know, it's funny, Rick. I remember the first time we spoke and you came on the show, which is probably 2 or 3 years ago. And at that point, you were pretty upset because you weren't getting a lot of help from law enforcement throughout the United States. And it seems like law enforcement at every level has come to the table now, and they see the severity of cargo theft, and they see that, you know, the other possibilities of what the damage of cargo theft can result in.
Well, you're right, but don't misunderstand.
Excuse me.
I also, Chuck, I know it's Jeff, not Rick. Because you called me Rick the last couple of times, but just
Sorry.
that's all right. That's all right. But it's never, you're upset with law enforcement. You're upset about the availability of law enforcement. The guys that work in law enforcement for cargo theft crime are some of the hardest working, dedicated guys I've ever seen. But where it doesn't make it fair, or, well, I don't want to sound like a crybaby, where it's unfortunate is the cutbacks in there,
Right.
where you just don't have the people. I mean, you know, historically in the United States, going from west to east, we had 3 different cargo theft task forces in California: LA City, LA County, the state. Then you moved over to Chicago, and you had a
Right.
large task force because of Elk Grove Industrial Village. Nobody in Chicago now doing cargo theft on a law enforcement level. Then you got down to Memphis, where you've still got a pretty active cargo theft group that's anchored by the FBI with local municipalities involved. Then you used to have one of the best in the country in GBI in Atlanta, Georgia, disbanded, no longer do cargo theft. And you have Miami, which still has a cargo theft test down there with local municipalities anchored by the FBI. So you went from having about 125 detectives trained in the nuances of cargo theft down to about 25. So that's where,
Yeah.
I mean, I want to be clear. I love these guys. They're my friends. They're my buddies. That's the disgust. Is not the guys doing it. It's
No, right.
there's just not enough of them. I mean, like,
Unfortunately, it seems like like everything else, the squeaky wheel gets the oil, and right now this is not squeaking loud enough. But you said something a little while ago by getting the attention of some of the different congressmen and things of that nature, the different lawmakers, that may help with maybe possibly, hopefully, getting a little bit more, bringing a little bit more awareness to the situation. And it's really unfortunate. Jeff, are you seeing that with all the things that are going on, especially now? I know previously we talked about how some of the thieves or the different organized crime rings, they would steal the entire truck and things of that nature. A lot of with the whole parking situation, we have a parking problem in the transportation industry as well. But you're starting to see, I know here in Atlanta, there are a lot more private parking places. People, it's a nice little business. People are parking truck. It's not a truck stop, but just truck parking.
right.
And a lot of guys, local guys or whatever, may go and since they pick up a load and go drop their truck off. Now it is a gated situation, but have you noticed any pickup as far as thefts occurring from those type situations? And if you have, are there some different things that people can do to be aware of to try to make sure that they don't become a victim of things of that nature?
During like I said, if you go back about a year, when you had the 2 different types of thefts where the traders were being followed from these computer manufacturers and shippers, that was happening all the time, because what would happen, it would be a lot of times it would be an afternoon delivery or pickup, 2 o'clock in Southern California, where there's no way they're going to be able to make any kind of delivery appointment. in Northern California the same day.
Right.
So and the thieves knew this, so they would just wait and then follow, because they knew that probably that rig is going to stop somewhere in the Inland Empire or Bakersfield, which is halfway, and it'll be left there overnight unattended. And that's where you get in. Well, is it a secured yard or isn't? Well, a lot of guys think because it's fence gated and not necessarily guarded but lighted, that's a secured yard, which it's not.
Right.
It doesn't meet the criteria. It's better than parking
Right.
in the street, but to a cargo theft, that's very, very little deterrent. And
Right.
so we did see a lot of thefts going on there, and it didn't matter if the yard was open with the that the gate was open 24/7, or the last one in, last one out, close it, or electronically controlled. That's easy pickings for a cargo thief. So we saw
Absolutely.
a lot of that. And now, like I said, we're not seeing as much of it now because, as I said, what's dominating the industry is this strategic cargo theft. And one thing I want to mention now before I forget about it is what we found on a case just last week. What was it? The truck broker, when we were working this together, he called me and told me what had happened. And what he had found out is that these guys had actually went to GoDaddy and created a domain of a very, very large, and you'd recognize in a heartbeat if I mentioned their name, trucking company. It's also a broker. And so when they book a load now, they're seeing that email address because it's their name dot or hyphen com.
Right.
So they're looking at it. So to the outside, well, that's him. So nobody even thinks about that being a nefarious operator doing that. They're going to book loads through them, and they've just taken off, and it's become epidemic with that company. And we're seeing that with a lot of the large trucking companies here. They're doing the same thing. So we've been this week trying to call these people, trying to get a number of people together so we can sit down and talk about this, because it just makes it that much easier. And Chuck, before we went on the air, Rico, we were talking about this. Also, what we're seeing is where they might steal the identity of Muhammad Trucking, Rico Muhammad Trucking.
Right.
And then you might be in their system, or you picked up loads there before, and they say, well, let's give this guy 7 loads. Well, you might accept those and deliver the first 3 without issue, no problem. Then you'll steal the next 4, because by you delivering the first 3, you gain their confidence. They think nothing more about any vetting. We're seeing that happen a lot. That's going on a lot. And then go ahead.
Well, I'm just wanting to follow because I'm trying to think from a pragmatic standpoint for small guys, local guys, or people that may be picking up loads in a way to maybe make sure that they don't become a victim. What, if they're parking the truck and they are loaded and they're leaving the truck, at a lot or something like that, what are some things that they can do to may not be 100% foolproof, of course, because I mean, like you say, if a thief is desperate enough, he's going to find a way. But what are some good deterrents or some good things that somebody could do from a practical standpoint that may help them maybe be a little bit more work for a thief than they may want to do to kind of protect their truck or in that load?
Rico, it's a great question, and it's really got a very simple answer. Most truck parking is all done out of convenience. We see it all the time. I think of the area that is it U.S. Highway 25 that runs through Florida that goes through Sebring. The Cubans will just run that looking for typical story. You'll have a young truck driver. His girlfriend lives in a trailer that's along that route, and for convenience, he'll park his rig containing a full load that's got a seal and a lock on it at an abandoned truck stop, and then he's only a mile away. Well, it gets stolen because he doesn't think. And the simple answer I'm going to give you: there's secured yards everywhere that somebody could park, and they would never get a theft. Well, I don't like to use the word never. It would take a very, very rare circumstances for a theft to occur. A good example is you look at any Swift facility in the United States, they don't have trailers stolen from their yards. I can think of I used to do a lot of work for night transportation in Dallas, and they had a yard down in Hutchins that was dark. It was fenced, but they had a guard in there with a flashlight, and they had theft all the time. But now they've redone that yard, and it's become one of the most secure in the country. They never have a theft. It's guarded, gated, lighted. You can't get in that yard without being stopped and ID'd. Your rig information will be recorded. They just don't have thefts anymore. So if a person would take that time to seek out those, and there are ones throughout the country that advertise, but again, does a guy want to, let's say the closest secured yard he can park, it's 20 miles away. Does he want to do that? No, he'd rather
Yeah,
drive.
it's a lot easier to pay, you know what, to pay for the fuel to go 20 miles than it is to get your truck stolen with all your, all your gear, your trailer, and your load. Because you know what, the insurance company, that they don't always want to cough up
Right.
the claim money. And this is something our listeners need to know. If you have if you have a theft and you haven't practiced due diligence in where you left that trailer, the insurance company can say, whoa, we're not insuring your truck and trailer and load when you leave it at the side, in a shopping plaza.
Negligence.
Go cover it yourself. Look at your policy. Insurance companies aren't stupid.
But the biggest problem, Chuck, you're spot on. The biggest problem with that, though, is most of these thefts occur. It's the first time it's ever happened to them.
Of course.
Because once it happens twice, because they'll come out and they're literally shocked. Well, God, I know I parked my rig right there. They kind of look around and they're like, "Am I dreaming, or does something happen?" And they think, "Oh, maybe it got towed." They start calling the towing companies, but usually somebody's had their tractor or their rig stolen. Once they will be cautious the next time. But
Yeah.
a lot of these guys have a very, very poor understanding, and I'm not trying to be critical towards them because, like I said, I think the bottom line is convenience. How close is it to where I live? But and then a lot of times they also go in and they have a false sense of security on a yard. That when I go and look at it, or I've talked to them, the guy goes, "Yeah, it was a secured yard." And I go out there and I look at that secured yard. You got a gate here that's open all the time. That the only way it gets closed is last guy out. Well, if he forgets it, and they're going, "Well, yeah, but I pay $400 a month for a spot." They say they've got CCTV. Well, you go there. Well, the CCTV cameras aren't working. So a lot of times, I think the verbiage sounds good and the protocol sounds good, but if it's not operable, if it's not active, what good does it do you? You might as well park that load out on the street. I mean, because it's
Yeah.
The thing I heard was, okay, so you've got a secured yard and somebody goes and steals a truck or steals a license plate even.
right.
Okay. And it's an unmarked truck. Either way, doesn't matter. And they go in and they somehow have access to the gate because their buddy parks there for $400 a month. So they have the code and they hook up to your trailer because they know it's loaded and they pull out. What are you going to do? You got the license plate. It's stolen. What good did it do you?
You're right.
Yeah, it's a sinking feeling when like you say, when you park your. I've never had my tractor or my truck or anything like that stolen. I did once I was on vacation and I had a rental car stolen. I was parked on. It was in Chicago, parked on a little side street in Chicago, and went somewhere. And when I come back, I was like, I know the car was right here, and I seen busted glass all over the place, and I was like, well, the car's not here anymore. I tell you, that's a real sinking feeling, and I could only imagine that was just a rental car. Yeah, so no harm, no foul. There, that's on that's on a credit card or something like that. But when you talking about something as precious and definitely as expensive, and your livelihood is on the line, when you have your entire truck trailer stolen or something like that, with a load of cargo, boy, I tell you, now, Chuck called me the stress king. Now you talk about some stress. That definitely would be some stress, some stress. So these deterrents that people that you see sold a lot of times, Jeff, like the airline couplings, where they put and cover the airlines inside of the tractor, things of that nature. How effective would you say those things are? Or the club, anything like that? Any of those things really super effective, or is it just you just creating a little bit more work for a trained thief?
Kind of combination of all. I think they're definitely worthwhile. You're talking about glad hands locks and kingpin locks. No, definitely. But I mean, a good cargo thief can get a kingpin lock off in no time. But still, it might deter some and not others. So I think you're much better off using a kingpin lock and glad hands locks. But we see.
Well, what about the locks that you see people sometimes they put on the actual the air valves inside of the tractor?
Again, very, very, very effective. But if a cargo thief, we've seen, we do work down in Latin America now. My business partner Curtis Salisbury, matter of fact, he's in Mexico right now. What we see there is like there's that route that's running from Monterey up to Nuevo Laredo has become a very, very dangerous lane, and the cartel intends it to be that way.
Right.
They, in the event, I'm trying to address your thing about what all kinds of safeguards might be on a tractor. They prepare for that. When they stop a tractor, they'll have like 4 carloads of guys with automatic weapons. They'll stop the truck, and in the event there's a kill switch or there's these kind of locks, they're willing to separate that tractor, pull it away. They'll have their own tractor with it to take that load because they've done enough research. Usually, what they're after is high-end electronics, so they're very,
Right.
very well prepared for that type of stuff. But
And it's difficult to negotiate and argue when somebody got an automatic weapon pointed at you.
well, and what happens down here, you're exactly right. And those guys are scared shitless. And hell, who wouldn't be? Because, like you said, the thing about theft, or like you said about the rental car, it's a very personal thing, and you feel like you've been violated. Anyone that's ever experienced any kind of theft, it's kind of a shock, and then they're pissed because they feel violated. Somebody took
Yes.
my stuff, and I've talked to drivers that come out, and they're making payments on a rig and a trailer. Well, hell, as long as that's missing, they can't. There goes their livelihood. Then they're depressed. They get behind on their mortgage. I've seen guys lose everything as a
Sure.
result of that. So,
Oh yeah, you know what? It's a theft of a truck can be the end of your trucking business,
Right.
because especially if you've got a load that it isn't going to be covered or only partially covered by the insurance company. That's number one. And then you, especially in this market, a lot of times what happens is you bought a truck last year, you paid top dollar for it, you put on 150,000 miles on it, and it's depreciated, but you still owe a whack of money on it. And the insurance company says, you know what, the blue book value of this truck is, you may owe $170,000 on it, but the blue book value is only 80 or 90. And that's what we're giving you. That happens all the time.
yeah.
And where do you get the shortfall from?
There's no gap insurance, and there's no commercial gap insurance, is there?
But
yeah, it's and that's where this business does not make sense. Where it's really hard. The big guys, they can, first of all, the big guys, the Swifts, Hunt, Warner, all the rest of the big carriers. Number one, they probably have pretty good security in their trucks. They've got satellites, and they know what they're doing. And like you said, Jeff, about that night yard in Texas, that was like Fort Knox. And these companies, they have yards from coast to coast, where if the driver is doing a coast to coast run, which they don't do as many as they used to, they can pull in every 600 miles or so and sleep in a fenced in yard that's a company yard.
And most of those yards like that, Chuck. And most of those yards, like we were talking about that night yard, I know I've had some that's gotten stolen, and we have gotten lucky enough to recover it before anything could be taken off. We get the whole load intact, and I'll say, well, follow me down tonight, and I know the people down there saying, hey, this guy just needs a secure place to park his truck for the night. They'll accommodate the guy at a very, very reasonable rate, and then he can be worry free. He's got a lounge in there where he can get get a snack, use the bathroom, and not be worried about it, because nothing's going to happen to that. And then the night's not the only one, but there's secured yards like that throughout the country.
Yeah.
And I know that, again, what Rico was saying earlier, where he's asking what can be done, and he's right, but that's the best thing that can be done, because you'll lose no loads unless you're going to have cartel guys come in 4 cars with automatic weapons. But we haven't had that happen here in the United States. But it's all, the thing that they have to get away from is the convenience factor, because I've talked to driver after driver that will say, well, I've been parked here for 4 years, never had an issue. Well, yeah, but you went and picked up that one load of computers down there in Compton that they were sitting there waiting for you to leave. That's all it took. And although you've done the same thing that you've been doing for 4 years, it just took that one instant. And we see that all the time, where the victims are people that have never had suffered a cargo theft before, and they're shocked. And
so Jeff, we keep, of course, high value loads such as electronics, computers, things of that nature. Of course, those are highly targeted loads. Are there any other segments that have you guys seen any increase, or have maybe there's an uptick with those particular loads being targeted, such as maybe produce or food or anything like that, or is it mainly still just the easy it's easy to unload, easy to sell electronic items, things of that nature?
There's more than just electronics. I mean, the thing we've noticed a lot, like I said here lately, are the solar panels. But
Right.
then also when you get another, anytime if there's any indication somebody is selling or transporting energy drinks, that's a big one too, because they can steal that and sell it very very quickly. Um,
Right.
there's a number of products and a number of warehouses that are known by organized crime, like in McDonough, Georgia. There's a place called Luxottica that makes all eyewear. Doesn't matter if it's Pearl Vision, Target, Walmart, they make all of them. Well, the
Right.
Cubans know that, so they'll follow trailers out of there. But again, what I always tell people, the first thing somebody said, well, I think it was an inside job. Well, what are you basing that on? Well, I just think it was. Well, usually you can prove it's rarely an inside job because they know brand, they don't know content. I've had things where $1 million load was followed out there from there to West Monroe, Louisiana. Driver stops, goes to the site, he comes out, his rig's gone. Well, to make a long story short, we recovered that about 2 weeks later, 2 exits down, because what was in there wasn't, if it had been a load of eyeglasses or corrective lenses, they'd sell that like hotcakes at a flea market. But what
Right.
it was a lens crafting machine that was about the size of a Volkswagen worth $1 million. Well, shit, they had no use.
Woo!
Yeah.
So we knew that would be abandoned. But like I said, they've got other places like they're in Virginia. There's a company that has print cartridges. They follow those up and down I-95 all the time. So there's certain places like that there's certain commodities that they'll just take a chance on. And we had that same thing happen with them, where they had some kind of a large commercial printer. Again, it was about the size of a Volkswagen, worth about $750,000 that they stole, thinking it was a load of ink cartridges. So
Right.
again, that's what I said. In most of the cases, they know brand, they don't know, they just don't know content. And thank goodness.
Yeah, so reason I was asking that question was because a lot of times if a person knows that they're picking up a quote unquote high value load, of course their antennas may they're going to be up, be a little bit more conscious, a little bit more on guard. But I was curious, is there the off things that you may not necessarily hear of that are starting to be targeted as well? Because we probably need to be just as diligent with all of our lows as we are with the quote unquote high value lows as well, with things that are going on, and with the economy being what it is, teetering on, not sure if we're going to be in a recession, not in a recession, all different types of things that are going on. And like you just said, people are pretty opportunistic. They'll take an opportunity and be patient enough to follow you all from Georgia all the way to Louisiana just to get an opportunity to get the truck and load off them up underneath you. That's some pretty good stalking and tracking and waiting and patience to wait for the right opportunity to do so.
Well, Rico, you hit on a good point. You almost have to be very, very diligent on anything you're shipping because, as I said, you have to remember with these strategic cargo thefts or fictitious pickups, a lot of times they're only looking up on a load board at the shipper and the consignee, and they can only tell a certain amount. So they're taking a chance. That's why some of these loads are abandoned because they just don't, like these yarn loads. Well, it's valuable, it's $150,000, but they don't want that.
No.
They're going to abandon it, but still, it gets stolen. And so even though there's things that they definitely want, uh, like about a year ago, one of the first ones we had was a load of IR cameras worth $2.1 million was picked up in
Ooh.
Compton. And we thought, man, they got lucky. How did they know they were there? We looked at everything. It was just simply a rate confirmation. It was the only documentation they had to pick up that load. I went to that warehouse. CCTV cameras were not working. They used the broker's name as the carrier. Uh, we had nothing to go on. We had nobody could tell us who the driver was, anything. But I did find out
Wow.
there were only two items inside that warehouse. One was IR cameras. One was solar panels. Well, it worked in another case when I recovered a load of tires out in Fontana. And I was talking to people out there that goes, yeah, it's kind of funny because this is the second time we've had a load show up like this. In the past, it's been solar panels. Well, then the light bulb goes off in your head going, they weren't after IR cameras. They were there thinking they were getting solar panels. And that load was for $2.1 million. 6 months later, we recovered that thing, 99% of it intact. Because
Really?
they didn't want the $2.1 million cameras. So, it's that's why on these things, you're always trying to think ahead. You're always trying to maybe outthink them or think what's going on. And sometimes you just have to. That's why when something happens, somebody said, well, there's no chance we'll ever recover that. And I said, well, I don't know. I mean, when a lot of times when law enforcement gets a search warrant, like we had about a number of thefts that happened back in November, and about 3 weeks ago, we found quite a few of those loads. I think we got 2 loads. One was some printers, but also the company name you'd recognize it is known for printers. But what they stole, because again, they were going on what the company name was, had a lot of sewing machines and bedazzling machines. Well, hell, they didn't want those, but they got a number of pallets of them because they thought they were going to be printers.
Right.
So, we recovered most of that. And, when we went out and recovered the guy from that company who's God, I can't believe how pristine these pallets are. And you guys found these all in the warehouse, and law enforcement did. And I said, well, it's easy to me to understand. When they stole these, they were warehousing them. That's where we got a warrant. We went to warehouse. That's where they're at, neatly, still shrink wrapped, neatly palletized,
Right.
because they didn't know what to do with them, and they didn't want them. How many bedazzlers can you sell to somebody? So it's that's my point about you have to really be careful with everything you ship, because they might get your load even though it's not what they intended to get or hope to
Right.
get.
Yeah, we've had, you know
Right.
what, through the years, we've had loads of products they didn't want that were left on the side of the road because they were, we had loads of kids' sandbox or swing sets once stolen, and the drivers realized after they stole it what it was, and these things are heavy. You know what? It would take 2 men and a boy to lift one of these cartons, and the crooks just left it at the side of the road, and it ended up in Quebec. And 3 weeks after the Quebec provincial police took it off the road, they decided to finally call us because they were charging us $100 a day in storage.
Yeah.
But we did recover it, which wasn't much more than the value of these great big toys.
Exactly. Yeah. It's and also sometimes it's amazing what does get stolen, and it's things that we don't think there'd been a use for, but that product wasn't stolen by mistake. It was stolen with that product in mind, and because
Serious intent behind it.
it kind of gets back to the point. Well, there's a market for everything, but going back
Right.
to what you said, another thing, there's just certain standard things, Rico, that are always suspect. One that is tires. Tires are always in demand, and they're easy to
Right.
get rid of. And building supplies, shingles. Anytime there's been any kind of a disaster, from
Yeah.
Mother Nature, we notice a big uptake in building supplies being stolen, because these guys are also very good economists. They know what people want or what people need, and they'll steal it and try to corner the market on it because they know that it's something that's needed. And thank goodness this year we haven't had the amount of hurricanes we've had in the past. But you take some of those years, like what happened down in Houston a couple of years ago. My God, the amount of stuff that got stolen because of all the building supplies that were necessary to go down there to rebuild were enormous.
What about a throwback to the old days back in the Roaring '20s? How about alcohol? Is that still a hot commodity to be stolen? Beer and things of the nature.
It does. We get beer loads all the time, but and I'm not trying to downplay, but beer loads are only worth about, when you talk about financial value, $30,000 a truckload. But what we're starting to see, and it's been kind of a puzzler here the last couple of years, is we had not seen tobacco thefts in this country. It almost completely stopped. But we've had 2 of them last year, and one of them still remains a mystery. It happened out in San Bernardino. And man, we got some good leads, but the cigarettes have got a state stamp on them, so they're very, very hard to resell. And then I had another case where there's a supplier of convenience stores. They were being targeted by thieves just coming up, and when a driver was inside offloading the contents for a convenience store, they'd jump inside his trailer and start rummaging through, and they knew what totes, by the color of the tote, what had cigarette or tobacco items and cigarettes, and they would pilfer and try to steal as many of those as they could. And they hit about 4 different locations up in the Fresno, Bakersfield area. And but that's the first time we'd seen actual tobacco product thefts in this country in a long, long time, probably 10 years.
Is that because smoking has gone down? The number of people smoking does that have something to do with it, you think?
I don't have any numbers on that, but I think it bears to, I think that makes sense. Yeah, I do. I think it would have to, Chuck, because when you look at the amount of smokers that are out there today from what there was in the past, it's been greatly reduced. So I think it probably does. And it's kind of taboo. I mean, I mean, look when we were kids, Christ, everybody smoked, or it'd be
Oh
national.
God, yeah,
Yeah.
I started smoking as a little boy because I thought there was actually something wrong with men that didn't smoke. They
And
were
now you
sissies.
and now when you sit
Well,
now when you sit at a building, shit, it's very taboo. They're almost
Yeah.
like lepers with the people
Yes, it's true.
they're treated. But I think you're right. I think it probably does have a lot to do with it.
something I think would be interesting, and I'm not sure, how far away we are from that standpoint. When with all of the legalization of marijuana and things of that nature, if that really starts picking up, and or will we even be able to ship it? Being able to pick that up and move that. I'm curious as to how that might play into this whole conundrum and scenario with as far as cargo thefts and things of that nature. When with
My
the
understanding,
way
Rico, is in Canada here, there where it's legal coast to coast, federally legal, is that they're shipping marijuana like any other commodity, like you would cigarettes or alcohol or beer or anything right now, domestically in Canada. Now, I think they are using all protocols that are used for the alcohol and pharmaceuticals and stuff. So they're using the same protocols. They're only certain companies, and I think they're not just giving it out to any driver. He's got to be cleared. And Rick, you would know. You work on
Jeff.
stuff. But you would know because you investigate up here all the time. Is that correct with Canada?
Well, what we're noticing here.
I'm sorry, Jeff.
That's okay. What we're seeing here in California, I had a case here where it was quite an education because Long Beach has developed kind of an alliance with the medical medicinal marijuana business, and there's a district in Long Beach now that's a medical marijuana district, and we had a manufacturer guy that bought it, sank a lot of money in this facility, and he was refitting it, and he lived in Hawaii, but yet he works here, and he went home for the weekend to Hawaii. When he came back, they had a lot of the necessary, like the growing machines, the lights, and all that, and somebody just wiped him out. And it was obvious it was a competitor because who else would have a need for that? And
Right.
but what my point is that, like it or not, depending on what your views are, that's become a very legitimatized business. It's not going to go away. There's a lot of money in it. So
Yeah,
I've
right.
also had cases down in Florida where they've stolen lumps of marijuana being shipped. They come in like like a large, like a large bag type thing that's vinyl, and it's in a raw form. So we see that. So yeah, totes exactly.
Right.
But we're seeing a lot of this kind of theft. So when when you go, it's these people are, it's a valuable commodity like anything else. So it's no doubt that's going to be an area that's going to be increasing, I think, in theft because we're, hell, we never had cases like that before, but now it's become legalized. It's totally changed the landscape.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be long until the federal government is going to legalize it. If they're looking at Canada, apparently the Canadian government's making money on the tax side of things. And if the town near our farm it's not a big town. There's 5,000 people there. And I think there's 3 or 4 pot stores now. There's more the marijuana stores than there is grocery stores.
Yeah, exactly. I see one of my buddies here has typed in a question. I want to answer it. He's one of my closest friends, Gary Thomas, is with the Kentucky State Police. There's no market for bedazzling machines? Question mark. Well, what I meant by that is, to those guys, there might be a market for it, but that's not what they're looking to use. They're looking for printers to move. I mean, they might have to work kind of hard to actually find a market for bedazzling machines, but I'm sure. But like I said, when we recovered that, we got back and I think every one of those that was stolen. So Gary, just to clarify that, I want to point that out. But it's just amazing when we see what happens so often. Is somebody might say something. Is there any way we'll get your product recovered? And what happens is law enforcement might get a lead and they get a warrant and they go to a warehouse, not even intending to find a certain item, and they're like, "Well, shoot, there's that load of tires, or there's that load of printers, or there's this load of TVs." They never even thought it. That's not the reason they were there. That's not what the warrant was
Right.
for. But
it's a crooked. It's not a legitimate warehouse to start with.
it's stolen. It's a warehouse of stolen goods. Exactly. Where they're going to keep it
So-
until they find a buyer. Exactly.
So Jeff, I'm looking at the time, and I want to make sure that we honor your time and everything. We appreciate you for taking time out to join us here on the show again. But before we get ready to wind down and wrap up and get out of here, are there any particular points that you want to leave us with? Anything that kind of some sage advice before we get out of here for us, and any other information you'd like to leave with us before our time runs out?
Yes, I think one of the biggest things that could help out right now, because it helps us on our investigations, because we don't always get the same information.
Right.
Like we've had a number of cases here the last couple of weeks where we've had like one client's got 5 loads that got stolen. Another one's I've got one right now. It's got 62 loads that have been either a short delivery or have been stolen. And what really helps out is if the company where the consignee can get pictures of the driver's license, information about the rig, all the paperwork, because we're also seeing on a lot of these loads where there's shortages, they'll be picked up, and then there'll be thieves will take it to a cross dock, either switch trailers or keep the same trailer, and then offload part of the product and then deliver it short, and then mark the POD as full. Because a lot of these places, like if you're going to a Costco or a Walmart or a Best Buy, they don't have time to do a full piece count there. So the bad guy knows that. He'll dummy up the POD, send the broker that the shipment's intact. Once the final tally's made by the consignee, they're like, oh no, that thing was 45 TV short. And so we're seeing that all the time. So because of that, try to get as much information from the driver. Take a picture of his rig, take a picture of him, take a picture of his driver's license. All that stuff is so important in helping us do what we do. And then again, just like I said, I know it's a pain in the ass, but if these drivers would just say, man, I know it kind of sucks, but I've got to drive 20 miles for my rig to be secured. Well, it's worth it. Do it, because it'll save you a lot of heartache. Your equipment won't be stolen, and the that's the nightmare goes on when you've got you're hauling like a $750,000 load of cell phones, and it gets stolen. Then there's a lot of egg on your face, and probably costs you your job.
You know what? Even a $50,000 or $100,000 load, you lose the load, and you also lose your truck and your trailer, and that's your livelihood.
Oh, you are,
and more than likely, your insurance company is probably going to drop you, so you're going to lose your business.
You're right, and then Chuck, you brought a great point right there. I don't want to make everything about money, but you're right. Sometimes there might be a unique item that hits the marketplace that just catches the market by storm that isn't that expensive, but it's very popular, and it could be a load of $50,000 worth of product, but that becomes the highest item there is. So yeah, you're right. It's not just $1 million load or a $500,000 load or $100,000 load. Sometimes the value of the commodity is not really key. It's the popularity of it.
Hey, Jeff, you and I are old enough. We remember the pet rock and the chia pet and all sorts of crap that has come out through the years, that had no value except when it hit the market, and then it was hot. What were the Rubik's Cube? There's all sorts of them.
Exactly. Yep, you're right.
So Jeff, if you don't mind, or if you'd like to, how can people find you? How can they get in contact with you? If you want to leave your contact information, or if you want to leave any other information, please, the floor is yours to do so.
Yeah, like our company is called Transit Risk Management, and that I'm in our office right now in Long Beach, California. Don't you like that nice background, the city of Long Beach there? And like I said, we do work throughout North America, and of course we, like I said, but we're headquartered out of here. I live in Dallas. This office is run by Sam Wadwani, who's a former ship captain, and he's like an insurance encyclopedia. He's a brilliant man. Curtis Salisbury, our partner, handles everything in Latin America, and that market has grown. We get all types of requests for that. But our main number here in Long Beach is 562-436-0900. I can be reached by my cell phone, which I have with me 24/7, and that's 817-233-8158. And our emails are all the same. It's jeff@trmus.com, sam@trmus.com, and curtis@trmus.com. And also, we've been very, very blessed. We've had a lot of people I've worked with over the years that we've worked with, like the people in Dallas, Fort Worth, New York City, around the country, where I've gotten to know people handle cargo theft. And when they retire, they want to go to work with us. Keep controlling the pool, and it helps because it helps us. We've pretty much got resources anywhere in North America. If something happens, we can make a phone call and get somebody there and provide some answers. So
that's great. You are such a wealth of knowledge. You know so much about this. We really appreciate you joining us on the show, Jeff.
Well, thanks, Chuck. It's funny. Somebody asked me how I got to know you, and I said, "Well, I had a theft case up in Toronto, Mississauga, and Chuck was a broker that was a victim. So I went and started asking questions. We sat there for about 4 or 5 minutes. He goes, "Man, you know a hell of a lot about cargo theft." I said, "Well, I've been doing it for long enough. I should." So that's kind of how our relationship started, and it's been. I'm very, very thankful it has.
You really you know everything there is to know, and you know what, I really do appreciate your generosity at sharing your information and all your knowledge with us and our listeners.
Well, I hope that I appreciate the opportunity. I hope that we hit on things that there's going to be some redundancy, but every time I try to think of what's the most topical thing that's going on, that's a little bit different that's out there, because it's ever changing. Well, we catch guys and they find a different way to do things, and then you have to start all over again and scratch your chin and work case after case to figure out how they're doing it. So it's ever changing and always a challenge.
Well, unfortunately, if you're investigating any in Canada and they do get arrested, by the time you finish doing your report, they're out on bail up here. It's an ongoing problem.
Well, last time I was up there, Chuck, I don't want to go over the limit here too much, but the task force in Peel and York regions are great guys. But the problem is there's so much violent crime in Toronto, they have to take from those task force guys doing cargo theft. So last time I was up there was like maybe one guy and a supervisor handling the Peel region for cargo theft. And as you well know, that just is not enough guys for the amount of cargo theft.
Yeah, we give you guys in Southern California a run for your money on theft, don't we?
Exactly. You're right. And then, of course, Rico, where you're at, that's one of that's one of the worst cargo. I mean, theft-wise, it's usually Southern California, Dallas, and Atlanta, about the three worst. And you've got so much localized gang members down there that are doing a lot of historic cargo thieves down there. Plus, you've got the influence of the Cubans being just north of Florida. They're sniffing around different, they know different places that have that produce and ship high value goods. So, those guys are very, very busy as well.
Nothing sacred anymore, is it?
Right. Exactly.
Absolutely. Well, Jeff, we definitely appreciate you for taking the time out to join us. We're always grateful for you doing so. If there's anything that we can do for you, please don't hesitate to ask or call us and let us know. Jeff, I'm sorry, Chuck. I'm doing the Chuck impersonation.
If I can help any of our listeners, please feel free to reach out to me. I do have a new email address. It's chucksnow280@outlook.com. Feel free to reach out to me. On a side note to our listeners, I just ran into something last night I just want to share with you. A lot of our listeners I know look at truck paper all the time, looking for trailers and tractors, looking for motors and other components. If you go on the new truck paper site, it's not as friendly as it used to be. I called them, I actually sent them an email late last night, and they called me this morning by 10 o'clock my time, and they were on it and they sent me information, helped me navigate the site. Feel free to reach out to them if you're having problems with their site. It's really, really changed. And with that, Rico, I'm going to let you back her in a hole for another week. And again, Jeff, thanks again for joining us.
Guys, it's always an honor. Love doing the show with you. And anytime you want me, just let me know.
Okay, we will for sure.
Okay.
Absolutely. Thanks again. Thanks again, Jeff. Good night. God bless. Want to tell a friend to tell a friend about the show. Like, share, and subscribe on all of the different platforms. You could have been anywhere else in the world, but you took a little time to hang out with us, and we're always eternally grateful for you doing so. Until the next time, ladies and gentlemen, stay safe, stay healthy, keep it in between the mustard and the mayonnaise, and God willing, we'll talk at the same time, same place next week. God bless you and good night.
Good night.
Catch on the flip flop. God bless.